Why did you learn to play the? No, for president, no.
Family is a place where minds of other minds. If these minds love each other, the home will be as beautiful as flower garden. Nam Mami Damsu. Nam Mami Damsu. Nam Mami Damsu. Nam Mami Damsu. Today we'll be doing Sambujo on page 22, followed by Jusei on page 23. And during the chanting of Jusei, I'll be reading the names of the families for the month July, and you can come up for a show program.
Ah.
Would everyone please rise for the reading of the three treasures on page 3? Fortunate is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Rare is it to encounter the teachings of the Buddha. Now we hear it. If we do not seek the truth of the Dharma in this life, in what life shall we find it? Let us fervently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth.
I take refuge in Buddha. May we all together absorb into ourselves the principle of awakening enlightenment and awakening within us our highest aspiration. I take refuge in Dharma. May we all together be submerged in the depth of the Dharma and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in Sangha. May we all together become units in true accord and a life of harmony, in spirit and universal brotherhood, free from the bondage of selfishness.
Even through ages of myriads of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful teaching. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Tathagata's teaching. Namo Namaste. Namo Namaste. Namo Namaste. Please remain standing, and our Gatha today will be the Texture of Life on page 178. And now we'll hear a Dharma message from our good friend, Reverend Don Castro, the retired Rinban from Seattle Betsuin, and we thank him for joining us today.
Please bow your heads for the quote from our founder, Srimad Shoni. I have gathered the true words, so they will help others to practice the way to enlightenment. My wish is that those who have attained enlightenment will lead those who come after them, and those who aspire enlightenment will follow their predecessors, thus following one after another, endlessly and uninterruptedly, until this boundless sea of birth and death is exhausted. Namo Amida. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting me to speak. Excuse me. My quote from founder Srimad Shoni, I sort of paraphrased it because he says, quote, to help others to practice the way for birth. And you have to understand the language of Dober Shinshu before you understand he means birth in the pure realm. And so I said, well, which is the equivalent of enlightenment. So practice the way to enlightenment. May those who have attained enlightenment lead those who come after them, and those who aspire enlightenment. So you get this feeling of ongoing progress. You know, it's a hopeful future. Each, you know, trying to lead those who come after them, following those who have come before us. So I think those of you who are observing Schultzke podium today, may those who have come before, and those who are close in memory, may they be your inspiration and your guides, realizing that, as Ogui Sensei used to always say, our life is not our life, our own life. You know, profound causes and conditions have enabled us. You get this passage that's in the Japanese language. We are able to be here due to the efforts of so many people. Now, someone was asking me, what are you going to talk about this morning? Well, let's see. There have been some pretty big changes in this country in the last couple of weeks. And this is 4th of July weekend. So I better not say anything political. I thought I would throw out some thoughts. And I can't say anything. I mean, so many changes, so many Supreme Court decisions over the last couple of weeks. And many of them, if not all of them, are based on religious views, religious perspectives that pervade our modern American culture now. And so I thought I'll start first. I'm going to change my whole sermon. I'm going to start first with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Because, you know, the whole issue of abortion is so different from a Buddhist point of view. You know, what did we say in the Three Treasures this morning, the Three Refuges? You know, different versions of it, but something like, it is rare to be born into human life. You know, hard is it to be born into human life. How fortunate we are to be born into human life. And so there's a strong reverence for life in Buddhism. But the basis of the Buddhist teaching is, what is our intention? And what bothers me about framing the issue in terms of human rights is that I'm afraid that if we say it's my right to have an abortion, or it's right to life, you know, which to me, I'm concerned that it makes it less compelling, more okay in a way. You know, we don't have to think about our intention. If that's my right, I don't have to think about my intention of doing something. It's my right to do it. Okay? So, I remember my first wife. Many of you remember my wife Linda, who passed away 7 years ago. And she was a music teacher, but her first job, many of you probably don't realize, was as a registered nurse, which she felt her parents pushed her into it, and her heart was never in it. You know, her music was her life. And so she eventually left nursing and went into teaching music. But when she was a nurse, when we were first married, I remember it really bothered her when a 14-year-old girl had come in for her second abortion. You know, and you know, how can we deal with that? You know, it's got to go back to, of course, parenting. It's got to go back to churches. It's got to go back to a reverence for life. What is your intention? And also in Buddhism, our responsibility, our personal responsibility for our actions. And so in Buddhism, if you go to any Buddhist temple, most Buddhist temples, part of the service is the taking of 5 precepts. You know, abstaining from, toxicants and the taking of life is another precept. But in Torah Shinshu, we don't take the 5 precepts. We realize, ideally, we would take the 5 precepts, but we can't. As a human being, we realize we're taking life all the time. And our intention is self-preservation, but there's a humility to Torah Shinshu. It's not that I deserve this, but rather I live at the expense of other forms of life. And to be sensitized to that, and to truly, humbly bow. I mean, it still bothers me, and we still do it, and I see ministers doing it, itadakimasu. It should not be that. It should be, how do I say it? Itadakimasu. I realize I am so fortunate to be able to live due to the sacrifices of others, whether it's literally their lives but I choose to live, so I choose to live, meaning interdependently. We live interdependently. Living interdependently means we live at the expense of other forms of life. So living in harmony, which is the third of the 3 refuges today, I take refuge in Sangha, maybe live harmoniously. Living harmoniously means I'm in the picture and I'm living at the expense of other forms of life. And so, but in other ways, Buddhists frame the issue of abortion. And I'm going to mention some things that have happened. And no one can ever identify who I'm talking about. It happened so many years ago. It was the people involved were not members of our temple. But I remember a woman coming in and wanting to have a memorial service for her baby who died. And in the course of conversation, turned out it wasn't a baby, it was an aborted fetus that she was having an abortion for. And she felt that after having the abortion, her life had just gone down, all kinds of bad things had happened. And she felt that the aborted fetus was taking revenge on her. You never hear things framed in that way in this country. That a human being has had other lives, that the fetus has had other lives. Actually, in Buddhism, a fetus becomes a human being when the baby starts moving in the womb. And that's an indication that relinking consciousness has taken place. And that a life is, fortunate to be able to be born into a human life, as we say. So it really adds a sense of gravity. And whether, if we had an abortion, we would believe that it took me by surprise and sort of shock. When she said that, what do I say to her? I said, your baby, your fetus, I don't know exactly what words I used, but I said, has led you here to hear the Dharma. It's not revenge, but it's rather saying you need to understand the compassion that we are all surrounded by. And that baby has led you to self-examination, to understand more deeply who you are, so you will not make the mistake to put a life at risk again, or to have to take a life again. So it's framed very, very differently in Buddhism. So when we make an informed decision. We assume responsibility for the actions that we take. And it's difficult. It's not something that's trivialized. Often people will have a memorial service for an aborted fetus in Buddhism. And I imagine it's a heartrending decision to have to do it. And for whatever reason, when a person comes to that decision, it's a difficult decision. It's not, a form of birth control, or it's not a 14-year-old coming in for their second abortion. It's a very serious decision that we make, but we assume responsibility for our decisions. In Buddhism, I think you can say there's probably the spectrum that you would have in Christian tradition of people who are completely against abortion. I know in my research, Buddhist monks often were healthcare professionals, you might say. They were healers. But if a Buddhist monk assisted or performed an abortion, he was expelled from the monkhood. So that's the way the monastic tradition looked at it. And also, that sense of the precepts of not taking life. This surprised me. I was reading a book by Reverend Shigaraki, translated by David Matsumoto, the IBS professor David Matsumoto. And in that book, Shigaraki Sensei, right, and it's called the Heart of the Shin Buddhist Path, The Life of Awakening. And it's a really popular book in Jodo Shinshu. And he says that the reason that so many immigrants from Japan were from Hiroshima Prefecture was that Hiroshima Prefecture had outlawed abortion. And so it became overpopulated. And you had people then going to Hawaii, going to the mainland, to make a living. So I thought that was interesting. So you can find that situation, and you can find other Buddhists. And I think from my reading in Jodo Shinshu, you would find people saying, it's a difficult choice, but it's your choice, it's your responsibility, and reflect on it, and look at your intentions. Intentions are really important in Buddhism. That's really, what it's all about. Okay, moving on. How much time do you have? Well, okay. Then you have, of course, the limiting of the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to regulate carbon emissions from power plants, which is going to have really broad implications, as Governor Inslee has pointed out in yesterday's, or day before yesterday's Seattle Times. And the minority, the liberals of the Supreme Court wrote, with the Supreme Court's, if they wrote this quote, the power to respond to the most pressing environmental challenge of our time has been curtailed. And it's going to be really difficult to respond to the environmental crisis. I don't want to say anything too much more because I founded the Eco Sangha. And to me, to be a Buddhist is automatically to be an ecologist. It's cosmic ecology. It's more than that. It's also conservation, because Buddhism is committed to bringing about a cure. So, and Buddhism is framed in a kind of medical way. The Four Noble Truths expressed medically, in medical terms, are symptom, diagnosis, prognosis, and cure. So we are committed to finding a cure, which is conservation. And I will move on. gun rights, I don't have to say anything about gun rights, vast expansion of gun rights with everything that has happened recently. Wow. Then finally, I wanted to address a little bit the issue of what was described as, oh, interesting, before I move on, Supreme Court Justice Neil Gorsuch, if you look online, you'll find that his mother was the head of the Environmental Protection Agency under Ronald Reagan. And she was forced to resign amid a scandal where she was allowing, she had too cozy of a relationship with big business and was allowing them to really influence what the EPA was saying. So anyway, it was a big scandal, 1982, 83. And her I don't know if it was undersecretary, but it was one of the leading figures in her Environmental Protection Agency was a woman named Rita Lavelle. And Rita Lavelle graduated from Holy Names College, where my wife graduated from, and they were so proud of Rita Lavelle. And she was convicted of allowing that to come in and to basically write, what they wanted, what the EPA's recommendations were. And there was a lab, Industrial Biotech Laboratories, that was submitting false test results. So science is no longer science. What is pseudoscience is actually a tool of politics, and big business. And we're finding, not too long ago, the same thing was happening. So I think it's incredibly ironic that Rita Lavelle and Gorsuch, the head of the EPA under Reagan, her son becomes a Supreme Court justice that passes this now new judgment that limits the EPA's ability, because his mother was really accused of trying to gut the EPA. So, okay. Now, about Bremerton. I remember many years ago being invited to participate in an interfaith baccalaureate for Bremerton High School. And it was interfaith, that's the way it was presented. And so there was this big rah-rah pro-Christian baccalaureate, and then Buddhists had 30 seconds to give a reading, and the Jews had 30 seconds to give a reading, and at the end, the Jewish rabbi said to me, "This is interfaith." So the idea of, well, in the newspaper it says the further eroding of the, quote, of the wall separating church and state, the further erosion of the wall separating church and state. The issue of prayer, school prayer, and I was on National Public Radio. They were quoting or interviewing actually an Episcopal minister from Bremerton, and she said, "How do you find one prayer that's going to fit all religions?" She said, it's like their approach is a one-size-fits-all. And that's one of my issues, big issues with the evangelical community. One, we have the truth, and everybody's got to conform to this truth that we have. And the years ago, when the Dalai Lama, if I'm repeating myself, those of you who have heard me before, bear with me. But the Dalai Lama visited Seattle. And so there, in connection with his visit, there was kind of interfaith talking groups that formed. And my talking group said, let's come up with one thing that we can all agree on. We could say, this is a universal statement. All religions believe in this. And so they finally concluded all religions believe in the golden rule. And I said, Buddhists don't. And they all looked at me like I was crazy. What do you mean Buddhists don't believe in the golden rule? And I don't know how many of you are familiar with the platinum rule. You know, I'm going to one up them, you know. The platinum rule is different. And it's very Buddhistic. The golden rule is, I mean, there's a lot to this as I've thought about this over the years. Actually, my teacher, Reverend Philip Eichmann, when I was at IBS many years ago in the 1970s, he said this, and I never forgot it. The more I think about it, the more I realize how different the platinum rule is than the golden rule. The platinum rules doesn't say, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, which is in the New Testament. You know, that statement. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That's a one-size-fits-all kind of approach. You know, in Buddhism, it's because you're using yourself as the measuring rod for other people. Platinum rule, which is actually a rule is used in in business, is do unto others the way they want to be done unto. Very different, you know. So when I do a wedding ceremony, I say, and generally when I do a wedding ceremony, it's Buddhist, non-Buddhist are getting married. And I say, and I tell the couple, we were just talking before the service, when my mother married my father, my mother was Protestant, my dad was Catholic. And then they got married in 1939. And my mother, to her lifelong regret, agreed to raise her children Catholic. And that was a requirement if the priest was going to do the ceremony. So I tell people, in Buddhism, we help our spouse to become a better whatever they are, to become a better person, you know. And we hope that they do the same with us, not to try to change us, but to help us to become a better Buddhist. And that's very different, very, very different. Years ago, someone had done a favor for my wife, and I met them. I'm in Centralia actually, and they had come up from Portland, and it had to do with transferring my wife's guide dog back to for treatment. And they were volunteers for guide dogs for the blind, so they came up and they took our dog Sparky back with them to get treatment for an abscess. And so when I met them in Centralia, I said, oh, you've come a long way. Have you had lunch yet? And they said, no, we haven't. I said, oh, let me take you to lunch. So we sit down, and they say to me, thank you. What do you do for a living? And I said, I'm sorry, we couldn't hear you. I'm a Buddhist minister. And there was a look of horror and shock on their face. And they said, but Jesus is the answer. And I said, well, that's nice. But they wouldn't let it go. They kept trying to work on me. That, Jesus is the answer. Jesus is the answer. So I said, well, in Buddhism, the heart of our religion is unconditional love. We don't like to use the word love, and I think it's a prejudice that arose in Japan because Japanese, when they hear the English word love, they think of eros, romantic love. And that's a big mistake, because there's lots of different kinds of love, And, so I've been using more and more, Amida with this boundless, unconditional, right? Boundless compassion embraces us all. His boundless love for all sentient beings embraces us all. So I said, well, the heart of our Buddhist teaching is unconditional love. Isn't that the heart of Christianity also? And they said, yeah, but you gotta believe in Jesus. And so I thought, okay, so you believe in unconditional love under certain conditions. And that's the problem. Buddhism is not even attached to Buddhism. It's a finger pointing to the moon. Don't get stuck on these concepts. If we are able to express unconditional love using Christian terms, of course, you got the wisdom side of Buddhism too. You got to watch out. Then that's why a rose by any other name would smell sweet, to paraphrase Shakespeare. So it doesn't matter what you call it. It's to get, and I think you have to intuit what unconditional love is. And over the years, as I thought about it, I think we approach it sort of intuiting it from realizing what's not it, if you know what I mean. Well, that's not it. I'm putting conditions on this. That's not it, and that's not it. But by doing that, you sort of get a sense of what it would be to experience unconditionally, and how profoundly difficult it would be to truly experience and to live a life of unconditional love. But we're not, as Buddhists, don't get stuck even on Buddhism. That, to me, was one of the most appealing sides of Buddhism. In the Kalama Sutra, we are, the Buddha is quoted as saying, to the Kalamas, the clan, I guess, of the Kalamas, that don't believe things simply because they're written in the sacred texts, or because they're handed down in tradition, or some great teacher told them to. But try it out. If through experience you are taught that this is healthy and wholesome for you and for others, then take it and embrace it. And on the other side, if you find this is unwholesome for yourself and others, then reject it. So that is a side, I think, of Buddhism that really attracts a lot of people. We don't say, you must become a Buddhist. And it enables Buddhists to respect other religious traditions. Doesn't mean that all other traditions are right, by any means. But people have, they make their choices, they investigate. Buddhism, religion of responsibility, means we investigate. We look back. In the Georgian Creed, it says, looking back on our own actions. What was my true intention? Let me be honest with myself. And so we're looking back, we're self-reflecting. That's our real practice. And then when we realize we are limited human beings, and we can't experience really very rare to experience anything even close to unconditional love, to true wisdom. But then that doesn't invalidate unconditional love, or that doesn't invalidate true wisdom. That's what Amida Buddha is. And that's why we say, I am constantly going back to the source of what is true compassion, true wisdom. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge because if left to my own devices, and Shinran Shonin says, I'll end up in hell. Left to my own devices. So we need that guiding light that inspires us, that draws us on. So that's a smorgasbord of my reactions over the last couple of weeks. I hope that you get some sense of food for thought out of it. And so I want to thank you for attending. Have a happy 4th of July. Don't fire off any firecrackers because the dogs in your neighborhood will not be happy. I will spend 4th of July in the basement with my wife and our dog, and the medication that he will be getting is called trazodone. So anyway, thank you very much. Please join me in that show. I'm on down.
Thank you, Reverend Castro, for your thoughtful message. Gives us a lot to think about and helps me just decipher. People ask what Buddhism thinks about what's going on in our world right now. So thank you for giving us some tips. Would everyone rise for Gatha Ondok San 2 on page 153, and then remain standing for reading of the daily creed of Joe Shinju. Turn to page 8 and read along with me. Daily Creed of Joe Shinju. Realizing enlightenment is assured, and reciting the Nenbutsu, I shall live my life cheerfully and positively, understanding the oneness of life, and cultivating self-reflection. I shall diligently attend to my life's tasks in gratitude. Recognizing the Dharma path, I shall help spread the teachings of the Buddha. Appreciating the Buddha Dharma, I shall respect and help others, working for the good of society. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. You may be seated. Do we have any first-time visitors here today? Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I guess. Hi, I'm Ashley McDowell. I was actually raised in the Idaho Oregon Buddhist Temple in Ontario. This is my boyfriend, Jalen.
I'm not scary, I just look like this.
Let's see, do we have any announcements?
Good morning. All members and silent members should this week will be receiving a letter about a Wellness Year. So if you don't get your letter in the next week, let me know. But there's some details in it. We're going to have an in-person loan for members and their families and their friends only, right? So not a public event. And then you got your letter. Please don't post it on social media or publicly. It's just a private temple event, okay? So if you have any questions, please let us know. Everything's free, donation based. But But yeah, hope to see you there on the 23rd.
Any other announcements? Okay, if you'll guys show for a closing meditation. Just as the rain falls on all vegetation, the Buddhist compassion extends equally to all people. But just as different plants receive particular benefits from the same rain, so people of different nature and circumstances may be blessed by different methods. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you for attending today's service. If you haven't had a chance to Oshogo, please do so. And look forward to seeing everybody next week.